it's not about the end result. It's about the journey that, that I took to get to that end result. And sometimes it's okay to change the end result. So yeah, for me, it's just a reminder, enjoy every moment.
To be honest with you, I enjoy not prepping for a show because I feel like that's when the authentic version of us kind of comes out. Otherwise, like it feels a little too rehearsed, right? And I think that there are some times when we probably have like an answer, we say, oh man, I wish I would have said X, Y, and Z, but then we get to do it again. Like we can always do another one. But yes, without further ado, welcome to this episode of the No Have Cakes podcast. I am super happy to have you here. And also I will say, I love your sign behind you.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Is there any meaning behind that like phrase specifically?
Yeah, I feel like I constantly get into states of just trying to achieve all the time, trying to tick off my to-do list, trying to, achieve something, succeed at something. And it just feels deflated. And you're like, actually, it's not about the end result. It's about the journey that I took to get to that end result. And sometimes it's okay to change the end result. So yeah, for me, it's just a reminder, enjoy every moment, because life is precious. You don't know what's around the corner. And what's that saying? It's not about the destination, it's about the journey. So it's just a little reminder for me. And I started to have it it's like now I turn it on. So it's a light. So I'm about to sit at my desk, I turn it on. It's just like that reminder of like, you don't have to be at your desk. You want it to be at your desk, and wherever you're aiming to get to, enjoy it. So yeah.
I love that. I love the intentionality behind turning it on to like actively put yourself in that frame of mind when you're going to sit down and do the work. That's a really good idea. I might steal that from you.
Yeah, I ordered it off Amazon. I'm obviously in the UK, but it was super cheap off Amazon. It wasn't expensive at all.
That's awesome. So I assume there was a point in your life where that like wasn't a thing, where this became sort of like almost an inconvenience to have the opportunity to do, your work.
I don't know. I think, if I'm honest, I've always loved my jobs. Like, I wanted to be a PE teacher from the age of 5, and I achieved that. I was PE teaching by the age of 21. I've always wanted to, play sports. So I was lucky enough to have an amateur athlete career alongside work. I always guess I wanted to either run someone's business or start a business, and I've really done that. So I feel like I've always done the things I want to do. So it doesn't feel like doesn't feel, I don't know. Sometimes I know people have to go to work and they don't want to, right? So I don't feel that, but instead I feel like I'm always pushing for that something extra. I'm always wanting to create something new. And it just gets to the point where then I'm not in the moment. I'm not present because I'm too busy looking in the future, or I'm too busy planning. I think my head naturally is a bit of a planner, a bit of a strategist, so I'm always, I don't know, I'm never now, I'm always in the future. So I think every year I do a retreat with my mindset coach called Play a Bigger Game. And it came up a couple of years ago of like, hang on, stop. Like, you've always done what you want to do. You're very lucky. You love what you do, but you don't have to always progress to that next level. Why don't you enjoy the fruits of your labor, right? So I think I've been on that journey for a couple of years, and I still need reminded. It's still like a quarterly goal of mine, like to check in. Did you actually enjoy the last quarter? Were you in the moment? So I think it's part of my personality to always be looking for that next version of me. And sometimes you can push too hard, so it's just a little reminder to enjoy every moment.
Which is understandable. And I think for someone with an athlete's mentality, that sort of becomes the default, right? Like, you got to prepare for the next challenge and win the game, right? That's ultimately what it comes down to. Is that where it comes from?
Yeah, exactly. And it's almost like a strategy. What's the strategy to get there? I actually fly to Ireland tomorrow. I am coaching the England 20s academy side for touch rugby. And all I've done, in my evenings all week is opposition analysis and what's their strengths, what their weakness, what's our strengths, what our weakness. And it's always about the strategy to win. That's kind of where my brain naturally goes. It's like my happy place. When people say they're in the zone, I'm like, I'm in the zone when I'm working out a strategy on how to win in life and business and sport.
That's awesome. Speaking of which, real quick detour. I don't understand the game of rugby at all. Can I get a crash course in how this game works? Because to me, it looks like a lot of fun, but also I have no clue what's going on. It just looks like everyone's running around.
Yeah, so there's actually quite a few codes of rugby. So you've got rugby union, which is 15 aside. You've got rugby league, which is 12 aside, 13 aside. You've got touch rugby, which is 6 aside. You've got tag rugby, which is 7 aside. And then you've got rugby sevens, which is 7 aside. Rugby union, rugby league, and sevens are all tackle. So you have to tackle. So someone will run with the ball. You've got to run forward and you've got to pass backwards. And you'll get tackled, and you get 6 tackles to get up the pitch and score. You score a try by putting the ball, like actually placing the ball over the line, not running over the line. And then after those 6 tackles, you have to give the ball up if you haven't scored or there's been no infringement. So maybe you pass the ball forward, that's an infringement. Tag and touch rugby are tag as you wear little tags, a little bit like flag football, which is going to be in the LA Olympics. You got tags, so you pull the tag off, that's classed as 1 tag. Again, you get 6 tags. And then touch rugby is 6 touches. So you just touch somebody, much quicker game, less space to work in because, it's quite easy to like put your arm out and touch someone. So you've got to work really hard to create space. So yeah, rugby ball, round ball, run forward, pass backwards, and score a try by putting the ball over the line. There you go.
Yeah, that was a really solid crash course. I mean, it honestly sounds relatively simple. I'm sure there's like a lot of nuance to the game, right, as you go, but it just looks like some level of constant action, which makes it kind of fun.
Yeah, it's nonstop. Like it's rolling substitutions. It's full on.
How do you get into that? I mean, I feel like at least here, it's not a super common thing. Most people here in the U.S. would opt into football. But I'm curious, like, is there a big youth sport component to that?
Yeah, so I'm originally from Australia, and it's called touch football in Australia, because their football is their soccer. They call soccer like America, whereas in the UK, football is soccer. So you can't call it touch football, so you have to call it touch rugby. Anyway, in Australia, it is Australia's biggest national game, a little bit like your gridiron, right? It's just the national game, so everybody plays it. I've played since the age of 5. It's even a subject. It's even an actual standalone subject in some schools. It's the biggest youth sport as well, and it's the biggest mixed sport. So yeah, for me, my whole family played it. I mean, I remember being, I don't know, about 14, maybe 14, 16, probably about 16. And I was in a team with my mum, my dad, my brother, and my sister. Like it was just what you did. So yeah.
That's awesome. So how do you go from rugby to AI? Because I feel like that's not a very straightforward leap. I'm curious to hear.
Yeah. Well, it actually starts from when I left teaching and started my own business, which is 11 years ago. I started, well, as you do, you don't start one business, you start 2 businesses. I was a personal trainer, and I also started an early years physical education business, so teaching sport. I come from a PE teaching background anyway. And I guess I built my businesses, and then the pandemic hit, so COVID takes over the world and everybody moves online. So I learned all things online business and like honestly absolutely loved it. For some reason it really just worked with my brain, like thinking about funnels. I learned about sales funnels, I learned about automations with Zapier, Facebook ads, all of that type of stuff. So after kind of we reopened, my early years physical education business went back to teaching kids in person, which so they should. And then my health and fitness business, I stayed online because that's where the money was being made. I didn't have all the overheads of this studio. I could create programs and sell them. It was crazy. So I kind of just stayed in that online space. And then I tried to franchise my early years physical education business. And I mean, I did franchise, but it wasn't easy at all. And I hired a copywriter. And although she was lovely, she wasn't actually very good. And I don't know if it was about her not being good or I didn't know who I wanted to join me as a franchisee. And like
Right.
she couldn't get it out of me. And then I discovered a tool called Jasper AI. And it's a copywriting tool that was around before ChatGPT. So, it was like my go-to. And Jasper not only created all the copy that I wanted to sell my franchise, but it also really excelled my online health and fitness business because it got that messaging right, and in the health and fitness sector, when you really niche, especially online, what's that saying, the riches are in the niches. I don't agree that for all business. I don't agree that for all businesses, but definitely for the, online health and fitness space, definitely. So yeah, I just became a bit obsessed, and then ChatGPT hit the end of 2022 and I was already kind of in the role of using Jasper and a few other tools, and obviously I'd learned a lot of online business, so that kind of just rolled through to 2023. And then I exited my health and fitness business at a good time, I think, for me and for the industry. And I also decided I didn't like franchising. I wasn't loving the lead generation bit. And I think also my personality is just a bit controlling, and it was hard to give up control to somebody for a franchise. So I used ChatGPT to restructure my whole business model. So instead of franchising, I now have business partners. Business partners buy a percentage profit share, and they come in at 30% profit share for a certain amount of money, depending on the size of the region. And then as the regional threshold, so as a region, as we grow, their percentage profit share increases up to 75%. And every year they have to pay the same license fee plus 10% inflation. And then, they're able to grow, or we're able to grow. And it kind of protects the main business as well, because that's one business over here. And then I have partnerships with different businesses that way. So, and within 2 years, I've managed to work with, or I now have 5 business partners that help run that business. So that was my, and then that was my opening for the business. Has grown so much now that, it's much better for me not to be in the day-to-day. If I'm honest, business slows down when I'm doing the day-to-day running. I'm definitely the bottleneck in my business when I'm doing the doing. I definitely should be at the top doing the strategy thinking. So yeah, business grew so much, and I was loving incorporating AI into my business, that I decided that I would run some workshops for other businesses. I was in some networking groups. So I did that, and that went really well. And all of a sudden I became the go-to AI expert, and I didn't even have a business. So at the beginning of the year, I decided to actually officially launch as a consultant, an AI trainer and business strategy consultant. So, and here I am 7 months later, and loving every minute, and pivoted many times and helped many businesses, and do not niche.
I love that. I love all of it. I especially love how, like, just the really authentic origin of how that all started, and especially you were leveraging, ChatGPT or Jasper to kind of get things started, and then now you're really leveraging that again to help other people kind of do the same thing. And I think that there's a really powerful lesson in that. I want to hear your thoughts on this, but the way that I see it, most people don't know how to use AI or ChatGPT or Claude or whatever they want to call it. I feel like most people look at it as like a magic lamp or a genie where they can just ask for something and it just kind of craps out the magical answer and then money rains from the sky. And it isn't that. And I feel like when you develop a good understanding of how to use it more strategically as like a thinking partner rather than just a doer for you, the entire relationship changes. Do you see the same thing?
Oh, you are spot on. We've been reading the same stuff. We're practicing the same thing. 100% that. How do I view it? I actually don't call AI artificial intelligence. I call it Amplify intelligence. And it's about amplifying the user. It's not about it being artificial. It's about you, the user. So strategically, 100% view it as you using your AI model as your second brain. And the only way it's going to be your second brain is if you give it enough knowledge base and enough context. And I always start with my clients with what parts of your brain do you want to amplify? For example, this morning I was talking to a HR consultant, and she wants to amplify her knowledge on building team culture. I'm like, okay, perfect. How do you do that? She's like, I'm delivering workshops. I'm like, perfect. We create an AI project, also known as a GPT, but we don't create it in the GPT because we don't want to share that link because it's got our IP on it if we're using ChatGPT. I do build AI models from a white label platform called Launch Lemonade. I do build from there because on Launch Lemonade, you own the data coming in. So you own the chats, you can share, it's not like owned by OpenAI, for example, and you can access all AI models. I think they're up to like 20 AI models. So all OpenAI, all Anthropic, all of that. But that aside, she's building initially on ChatGPT. And I'm like, okay, so you create a project on ChatGPT, which becomes your workshop builder on team culture, right? And you have to give it all your knowledge and experience on that. You then also need to give it some context. You are my expert, workshop builder on team culture, what you know about my company, what you know about me. That's you've got to ask me those questions. So it's almost being your executive assistant as such, asking you all these questions to get your domain expertise out, because like you said, people use it a little bit like it's a genie, and it spits out crap, and it spits out crap because you've put crap in, and we
Right.
are at I think we're at a really dangerous time, if I'm honest, because people don't know how to use it. The whole the education of AI just isn't out there. Without sounding rude, there's just lots of people selling prompt packs and pre-built GPTs, all of that crap, and I'm like, no. The education of AI, what are the AI literacy, what's security, what's compliance, why would you set up your AI assistants, how do you build GPTs, what is your lead gen, is it your executive assistant, screw all the automations. Don't start with automations. Start with building your second brain, because that is the fastest way to leverage, the smartest technology we've been given. So yeah.
Yeah. I love that advice. And I think it's very tempting to start with automations because it feels like, oh, if I invest 30 minutes into creating this thing, it's going to save me X amount of hours per week. First of all, it's going to take you way more than 30 minutes, especially if it's the first one you're doing. You're going to spend like a good 3-4 days or weeks on it to get it working, right?
Yeah.
And second of all, I think, to your earlier point, if you try and go into an AI model, whatever it is, and you ask it to say, hey, can you give me a business plan for my business? It needs to know what your business is. It needs to know who your ideal customer is. It needs to know your target market. It needs to know all of those things. And I think most people don't even necessarily know them themselves. So they're expecting to be able to say, write a prompt or copy a prompt from a prompt pack and say, hey, crap me out this awesome thing that's going to make a ton of money for me. But they don't have the foundational framework themselves to really even put in. So is it like a good, at least for me, this is the practice that I use, is sort of creating that foundational layer that says, hey, before we do anything, let's put all of the foundational information in place so that it does serve as a second brain. Because then at that point, everything about the business, the customer, hey, what does the website look like? What kind of language do we use? What do we say? What don't we say? What colors do we use, right? All of this other stuff. Because then I think once you ask it some level of question, it's now referencing all the information that right? Do you see it sort of that same way?
Yeah, absolutely. So yesterday, a client was just starting out with me, and I was like, right, jump on Perplexity, put in your website, put in your personal LinkedIn profile, put in your social media channels, and just ask Perplexity to tell you everything about your name, your brand, your personal brand, your company, who you serve, the market you serve, and then you feed it more information. Here are the clients I work with, right? Give a list of clients. It goes off, it finds them. Here's the problems I've solved, the solutions I give. These are my wins. These are the pain points, or sometimes you even ask, what are their pain points? Like, find me a lookalike audience to my 5 top clients, all on Perplexity, gathers the information. If you're on the paid version, you can do deep research. You can do labs as well. So labs, kind of creates you almost like a platform, which has got all that information on. And then that becomes the start of the brain. Plus now on ChatGPT and on Gemini and on Claude, you can connect. I use Google, so for me it connects to my Google Drive. So you can connect to Google Drive. So instead of having to find the documents, you just go. One thing I did yesterday was find me my last 5 workshop outlines and create me a brief for me as a thought leader, because I wanted to update my podcasting GPT that I use to allow me to guest on podcasts like this. I have a VA who uses my podcast guest GPT that I use, but I'm always updating the knowledge, right? So here's all the recent workshops I've done. Here's my podcast transcriptions. So it's constantly feeding it. All of my LinkedIn posts and my newsletter all goes, because I'm adding to the brain. Otherwise, it's all old stuff. But because the point of the story is, because Google is connected, I don't have to find those documents. It goes and searches it for me. And here's an example as well, putting my other hat on as CEO of my early years physical education business. After this podcast recording, I've got performance reviews with my team. And I was like, God, literally this morning, I was like, oh gosh, when I was planning my day, I was like, oh, I forgot to send those performance review questions. And I thought to myself, oh, I remember using them last quarter. And I thought, no, I'm going to go to Claude, connect to my Google. This person, JBM, is his initials, is my operations manager, business operations manager. I said, for JBM, I need to come up with 5 performance review questions related to our quarter 2 and quarter 3 KPIs, and then goes away, finds all the documents, everything in there, and comes up with my 5 review questions. I literally did that task in less than 5 minutes. Done. Yeah. Tick.
Which I love, and I'm in full agreement with. I think the difference here, if we can step back a little bit, is you and I are probably, I'm just an assumption, are probably years ahead of most people listening to this, where they think, hey, that's cool. I have the same kind of struggle. I am super late to a thing that I'm due today, but they have not yet done the prep work to build all that stuff out and connect everything and make it really custom. So what they do is they jump into a Claude or a ChatGPT and say, hey, can you give me 5 questions? And they get back crap loaded with M dashes. But it's just junk, right? And then they get this experience where they're like, well, AI is kind of useless. It gave me some generic stuff. Yeah, it's helpful. Or they try and actually use that to run their business. And now we've got people who are using ChatGPT to create a question. They're going to send to someone who's going to put that same question into ChatGPT and say, hey, give me an answer. Right. And now we have this degradation of services inside of a business where people are not even talking to each other. They're just essentially shell or Claude and ChatGPT to hang out with each other. So where do you think someone should start with this? Is it just open up a free account and play around with no expectations and start to understand how the relationship works? Like, what is a good starting point for someone?
Yeah. Open an account. In all of the accounts, you can add it says customize my chat or customize GPT. It's in the settings bit. It says customize. Just open a general chat and say, I want to customize you. I want you to ask me as many questions as you can to understand me and my role, my career, my business, whatever it is. And just constantly get the AI to ask you questions until you feel comfortable that you've given enough information. And then from there, ask it to write a brief that you then put in the custom instructions. And then the next step is, and I started off by, and this is honestly no joke, I started off with a sticky note on my laptop and a screensaver on my phone that says, can AI collaborate with me to do this better and faster? And literally now that's the first thing I think of, like almost straight away, because I had that reminder. Like, it's literally a sticky note on my laptop, and every time I was on my phone, it was like my screensaver for ages. My little girls were like, where's the pictures of us? Because they'd always have a picture of them on their screensaver. But they're like, what's this writing? Yeah, honestly. So I did that for, probably almost a year to get into that AI first mindset. Like, AI is here to collaborate with you. So then it's just start playing around, go to a chat, try and if you don't know how to prompt, and the models are so much better anyway. So if you're struggling a little bit to communicate, just communicate in the way that you want to communicate, but then say, I think I need you to do this outcome for me. What instructions should I give you? You know, because there's all the whole, like, you know, this prompt framework, act as this role, and I want this outcome, and consider this. And I mean, like, who's the smartest thing? What's the smartest thing we've got access to? AI. So AI can write the instructions for us. So just have a conversation with the AI and say, I need this. Can you help me get this result by telling me how to instruct you to do it? You know?
Yeah.
Yeah. And start
Which
there.
is good. And I think that's super helpful for people too, because it's definitely much easier to edit something rather than start fresh for most people. So even if you say, like your earlier example of, hey, tell me 5 things about my business, I think for most people, they're going to find it easier to get back the 5 things. Even if 3 of them are wrong, it's easier for them to go in and just correct those 3 things rather than think up 5 on their own, which is a whole different conversation. I do want to make sure we encourage people to do some thinking for themselves so they don't just turn into rotten vegetables. But again, like, use this as a strategic tool to help you, not to replace you, right? That's the relationship people should be striving for.
Yeah, absolutely. And I always customize my AI to ask me 2 questions. So in the custom instructions, you can obviously put instructions, like I said, but I always put in my custom instructions are always ask me 2 relevant questions to help you make sure you have enough information. And then my second question is ask me how I add in my domain expertise. Now, my perspective on domain expertise as a human is your knowledge, your experience, and your perspective on something. Now, if we're not careful, we are just going to have AI generated content followed by AI generated content, because the AI learns off the AI generated content, and we've not added in any of our human domain expertise. And my oldest little girl is 8, almost 8, and she actively uses AI all the time. And I am very worried that if we as human race do not learn AI education fast, that I think that there's going to be some rubbish out there that she's going to be using, and I don't want her to use that. I don't want it to only be AI. I want it to be human interaction. I want that human element to it. But AI, data anyway, is from all the knowledge that was out there for humans. So that's how it got it in the first place. So we have to keep adding to it. And I think that's like the most missed concept by a lot of people and in a lot of industries. And in particular, sorry to all the marketers, but in particular, all the marketers who are looking for quick wins. And, we got into this crazy cycle of quantity over quality and, that type of stuff. And we'll just create videos, and it's so easy to do that stuff, but we still have to add some type of domain expertise. So find a way to do it quickly. My domain expertise is just being asked questions. I love when people ask me questions, because I go, oh God, that's such a good question. Let me have a think about what my perspective is on that,
Yeah. Well, brings up a great point, because I do agree that I think AI is not going anywhere anytime soon. It's not going away. So the idea of teaching your kids how to leverage it and use it, I think, is smart. But I guess the concern there is, if you talk about asking AI at this point to consider your domain expertise, you've been you for a long time, a number of years. You know what your domain expertise is before AI existed, right? So for your child or my child, whoever it might be, is there some level of concern that the AI is going to say, hey, this is your domain expertise because I've had a lot of conversations with you. I interpret what your level of expertise is. And now this AI will start to sort of reinforce their identity on them. That might not be their actual domain expertise, might not be their identity, but it's sort of what is being reinforced by these continued conversations. Does that make sense?
Yeah. I'm going to start by saying I am a super optimistic person. So I'm always I always see the bright side and everything. So I'm going to give you the positive side of how we flip that. But there is always I call it a light and a shadow. I'm always like, here's the light side. But there's always a shadow side, which I'm not very good at tapping in. So I'm not saying it's not there. It's just, it's not my go-to. You're absolutely right. I think already we see a lot of biases in the models anyway. We see almost the AI, when they reply to us, wanting to mimic how we sound and how we like to be spoken to, which means we can stay down one kind of rabbit hole. But I think a whole part of the education of AI is understanding, and this is very, very needed for the next generation, understanding that we are humans and we're still in control, and it's about the questions we ask, and that we don't have to believe everything that the AI spits out to us. And it's our job to always question it, always question or debate or go back and forth or share, just as you would in a human interaction. Here I am sharing my thoughts, and then you've got your thoughts. I need to listen. It's part of emotional intelligence, is to listen to other people's perspective and see where you sit at it. And to be honest, I am that type of person who is easily convinced of something. I definitely wasn't taught to stand and like be okay with my thoughts. Someone else would add their thoughts and perspective, and I'd go, oh yeah, you're right. No, stop. They could be right, but I could also be right. And what if there is no wrong answer? That is a part of learning anyway, about your emotional intelligence, I guess, or your IQ. I'm not quite sure what you would call it, but so yeah, that's kind of, I don't know if I answered your question, but my perspective on is we need to be teaching and encouraging the youth to be super curious, always ask questions, be adaptable. Something might not work, doesn't mean it doesn't work. You've got to find a way to make it work. Don't take no for an answer almost, or, and I think the other really important one is how do you want to share your knowledge and experience? Because if we're not careful, we all will get down the trap of only learning off AI and not learning off each other. And I honestly believe the best thing about connecting, and this is what I love about podcasts, is there's always a teacher there somewhere. You're the teacher to yourself, but you're always the teacher to someone else, and someone's the teacher to you. And I think we do have to be careful that we don't over rely on AI to be our teacher.
I agree. I think that there's a laziness, might not be the right word for it, but I'm going to use this anyway. I think there's a laziness factor to some people where they would rather just have, let's just have AI do it rather than collaborate. All right, I love the word you say, collaborate, because it implies that you are contributing as well, not just letting it do it for you and you just kind of take a backseat role. And I want to share a story with you that my sister shared with me yesterday. It's not a one-to-one relation, but I think it drives a point here. She shared with me that she was in the store and she happened to witness a mom pushing her kid in the stroller. And on the stroller, she had this little clamp contraption thing that was a phone holder. And the kid was sitting in the stroller watching Bluey or some cartoon. And, my sister shared the frustration that, when we grew up, we didn't have that. We got to see stuff. And when you are a, 2-year-old kid, you should be experiencing the world and seeing colors and shapes and learning stuff, not just watching Bluey. But aside from the point, the kid touched the phone and wound up turning off the cartoon. And then, so now the mother grabs the phone and starts to try and go back into it. And while the mother is busy doing that, this kid takes the clamp thing on the stroller and is playing with the screw and is now occupied playing with this device, trying to figure it out. And the mother yells, no, don't play with that. You shouldn't be playing with that. Here, take this. And it sort of made me think about, when she said that we sort of have this a little bit backwards. And obviously that's not an AI related question, but are we opting for convenience when we should be opting for exploration? Right? That kid should be encouraged to go and play and learn things. Hey, how does a screw work? How does a ball joint work? How does all this stuff work in the real world, not just stare at a screen? And I think that same sort of thing applies here. There's some responsibility on us as the parents, as the leaders of the next generation, to say, hey, yeah, you should learn this, but learn it responsibly, collaborate with it, to use your word, not just outsource to it. And I think that's the big difference, is the collaboration versus the outsourcing. Does that make sense?
Yeah, 100%. And, we have got to a point in society where we rely on technology for everything, and including entertaining our children. And we know that, again, it has a light and a shadow side, because I don't know, maybe it doesn't have so much of a light side, but at the end of the day, the technology is there and you can't take it away. It's the same if you reverse back a little bit and you look at TVs, I guess the generation before me, maybe my parents or maybe their parents, it was definitely my parents, so my nan would have said something like, turn the TV off and go out and play, but then my nan's mum wouldn't have said turn the TV off and go out and play, because there was no TV. So you kind of just have to keep those, maybe we're summing up, what are our human non-negotiables that we want to make sure that we are instilling in the next generation. And yes, there's going to be technology that helps it do it, but we also need to be able to almost do it without technology, right? And I had, interestingly, it's kind of linked to this, but what you've kind of touched on for me is a little bit more thought leadership around, how we need to navigate the use of AI and whether we can't rely on it. We need to use it as collaborative. I did a thought leadership workshop only the other week, and we talked about kind of navigating change in technology and still finding our purpose as humans, right? So bear with me for a little bit on this. If you think back to when society used to ride horses, right? We used to ride horses for pleasure, socialize, and to get places, right? And then I think it might have been Gary Vee that said this, and he was like, everybody in New York, there was, I don't know, thousands and thousands of horse poo cleaners in New York, and then all of a sudden, the cars come in, and everyone was like, oh gosh, we're going to have mass unemployment because there's not enough people looking after the horses, and who's going to look after the cars, whatever. But the job market kind of changed from that perspective, and then how we used cars changed. Did we go out and socialize? Not really. Did we go out for pleasure? Not really. We just went from A to B. So we lost the two reasons why we used the horses initially, right? And then it was the same with the smartphone and social media. We had that in front of us. I kind of see them come hand in hand. I know social media was before the smartphone because I had a BlackBerry and my Facebook account was on my BlackBerry, so I do know that. But I kind of see them as hand in hand, and it was almost like you used to, I don't know, kind of ring up someone and go, yeah, meet you at the park in 10 minutes or something, and you'd kind of go to the park and you'd wander around and you would make do until they get there. Whereas now, go to the park, I'm like, where are you? Like, I'm using the technology different, and I'm not, as a purpose as a human, I feel like sometimes we don't do things for leisure. We don't do it to socialize. We do it just to get to something. And I think if we're not careful, AI, we can almost, for the next generation, they can only use AI for purpose, to just do things. Whereas actually, I think we could, for thought leadership perspectives as well, we could be using AI to actually help us create a different purpose in life that's not all about, making a living, which is what a lot of us get caught up into. And we can use it to build human connections, because we won't constantly be needing to do all of the mundane admin tasks. We won't need to be in a rush to get from A to B, because I think a lot of that is going to be taken care of by our agents, our AI agents, and probably even robotics, if we're talking, 5-10 years probably. And then actually we can sit back and we can have that human connection, but we are going to struggle and think, what is our purpose? Whereas when we didn't have this technology, we had a bit of a different purpose. So I almost feel like we might end up going full circle, where we go, oh, a lot of that's taken care of. What's our purpose now? How are we contributing to society, and how are we happy? How are we fulfilling ourselves? A long-winded bit around there, but it was very thought-provoking kind of workshop that we did, and it was a thought leadership for the petrol station industry, of all things, because petrol stations are changing, right? We're going to hybrid cars, driverless cars. It was very interesting. So a little bit off topic there. Sorry, Jim.
No worries at all. I think it's a great point, and I think it really just reinforces kind of what we talked about a few times at this point, is just the need for the collaboration, not the outsourcing. Because I feel like if you use it correctly, I imagine the way that you use it, the way that I use it, it's a tool to buy you more free time to do the things that you are really called to do, right? And to allow us to walk in our purpose, not to replace our purpose. But hey, if I can delegate a task, then I've been using it for years and kind of train this up in the same way that you have, where you can sort of say, hey, I need this XYZ done, and you've got the framework in place, so you can just boom, knock it out. Now you can use the extra 20, 30 minutes to go hang out with your kid, or, finish your day early, or learn something new. And I think that there's a lot of responsibility on us to use it correctly, right? To not get lazy, and to teach other people in our generation and generations to come how to use it responsibly, so that this doesn't become a problem. Because I do agree. I think you're at a spot right now in society where it could be ugly or it could be amazing, but I think the difference is going to be the people, right? It feels to me sort of like how money exposes who people really are. It doesn't necessarily change you; it just amplifies what you are already. I view AI in the same sort of way. I think the people who are able to leverage AI in some way, shape, or form inside of their day-to-day operations are not changing. They're exposing who they are, right? So the people who have this inclination to go out and help other people are doing it now at a faster rate. People who are trying to scam other people are doing it at a faster rate. Ultimately, it comes back to us being good, kind humans and helping each other and doing the right thing. And I think having conversations like this where you can understand, hey, how do I use it? How do I leverage it? How do I collaborate with it? Allows people to do that more and exposes people to the upsides and the potential risks. And I want to thank you for the conversation. I think it was eye-opening for a lot of people. And I am confident that people will have a different understanding of how to use it going forward. So again, just thank you for all of this.
Thank you. It's been lovely to chat to you.